Okay, so we last week we talked about how there are all of these ideas about what hell is, and there are all these caricatures about what hell is, and even some of we'll touch on a few of them this week, some of the ideas that exist around what the experience in hell is. And while I think that's worth discussing, and it's in the Bible, and it's interesting to study. I don't know that the exact nature of what that punishment looks like is as important as some of the other topics. When we think about the nature of hell and the fact that it is eternal, and that Jesus came, and I mentioned this last week, that Jesus came to save us from hell, so much so that he died. I think that it's important to keep in mind that it's, from a Christian perspective, it's less about what the nature of hell exactly is, but the reality is that our job is to desperately try to keep as many people out of it as possible. We can't save them ourselves, but we can introduce them to the one who can. And I pulled out Philippians 2:8 this week because I thought it dealt with that pivot really well, which was, and this is referring to Jesus, and being found in human form, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even death on the cross. And Jesus came and he was obedient to God. He died and suffered all of the punishment for us to pay for our sins. The thing is if it wasn't for our sin, there was no need for that. And so the only reason he came was to pay that price. And that's, so I have to think, and I have to say, okay, what was he saving us from? If it was something so significant that the God of the universe was willing to come and join us in the middle of this mess and die for us to pay the price and take that on himself, okay, that says something about what the nature of hell is, I think. There was, and I'll just mention this now because Katie made a point. Since last week we were talking about this, and she, I think it was after I had been watching some videos about hell, and we were talking about the idea of what's the term, Brad? Where the idea that God's going to eventually forgive everybody, universalism. So there is this concept called universalism, which is there are people who believe that eventually God's just going to forgive everybody because God is love and God loves everybody, and He's just going to forgive everybody, and that's going to be how it is. All the people in hell will eventually get forgiven. They'll pay their punishment and go on. And I got to thinking about that, and Katie made the comment that if we're all going to eventually be forgiven, why not just wipe us all out, let us start running the meter, and then we could be done by now. If he just would kill us all now, in 10,000 years, we're done, and we could just all be in heaven, and it's all over. Which is an interesting point. Why continue on? Why continue dragging this out if that's the case? And then I got to thinking, okay, well, if that's the case, if God's just going to forgive everybody because he's so merciful, why even bother to come and die? Like, why, if God has infinite power to do all of those things, and this gets back to some of the points that we started with last week. And this ties to God's absolute justice. So, I started us off with okay, what do we know about God and what governs? What are the rails, the bumpers, if you will? When Brad goes and bowls, he has to have the bumpers on to keep him out of the gutter. What are the things that keep us out of the gutter? And this is one of those ideas that I think is important with Bible study. You have the grounding that keeps you out of the gutter. And we know that God is good. So whatever he does is going to be ultimately good. It's not, we may not like it. It doesn't mean that it's pleasant necessarily all the time, but it's ultimately good. And, he does not lie. He has perfect justice, and he doesn't make mistakes. And so if we keep that, and again, if we keep that in mind, and that kind of governs the study and the discussion, I think that's what keeps us sane in some respects. Now, I did see, and I'll have a link for this at the end, there was a video that came out, I think it was Thursday, last Thursday, after we'd had that discussion, and I was like, wow, it would have been really nice to have this video to go through before last week, but that's the way it works. But it's a 2.5-hour video. I'd mentioned Kirk Cameron talking about this idea of annihilationism, being like ultimately hell is you're annihilated and you don't exist anymore. Some people call that a conditional view, and then what I believe, which is eternal punishment, is a traditional view. But the video is he brought in, because this became such a big deal. He called it Hellgate, like after Watergate, but Hellgate, and he brought in 4, I'll call them scholars, pastors, writers, theologians, 2 of them with each perspective. And they sat down for 2.5 hours. So this one conversation with these 5 men talking about this topic was 2.5 hours long. And so if you want to go deep dive on that idea of conditionalism and traditionalism when it comes to punishment and hell, feel free. I was not compelled by the discussion, by the arguments for annihilationism. They didn't bring up anything that I thought was just like overwhelmingly convincing. What I did appreciate was it was an incredible example of men of God sitting down, disagreeing fundamentally about a topic, but they started off by putting the Bible in the middle of the table, and they said, this is going to dictate everything, like everything has to be grounded in this. And they both made really good arguments from that, and you can see how you can come to different perspectives. But there was no name calling, there was no, even, I would say, nobody even got agitated about the conversation. They debated it. They had a great conversation. So I thought it was a wonderful example of how Christians should conduct ourselves. So I think it's worth watching, at least part of it for that. But when we think about what we're doing here, okay, so I want to address a few things, but primarily I want to kind of look at what does the New Testament say about, what do we read in the New Testament? And so I've got a bunch of scriptures here, pulling from the Gospels, the letters, and then Revelation a little bit, talking about hell that give us some characteristics in the way the Bible describes it. And then, your interpretation of that may dictate how you view it. But, I pulled these again, I brought these up last week, but why does a good God send people to hell? These are the questions that we're going to get, and I think ultimately it comes down to this, is when you're witnessing to somebody, you're talking to someone, and this may even be your family members. You may have someone in your family who is wrestling with these questions, who is unwilling to submit to God or turn to Him because they cannot reconcile a good God with this idea of punishment, or why would He not forgive people? The idea of hell and punishment, and Brad even brought up earlier. We were talking about the degrees of punishment. Like, well, what is are all sins punished equally? And in the same way, in heaven, are all the rewards the same? So this is a few of the things that I wanted to wrestle with. So since last week, has anybody formed any strong opinions or thought about it at all and wondered, okay, what is it that God is judging when He sits on the throne and we face Him in the judgment? Or, we know lots of good people who are going to end up in hell. Why is that? Anyone thought about that? Or
I mean, the reason you end up in hell is because you haven't accepted Jesus as your Savior, and you don't have the blood of God. I mean, that's why you're in hell. And that's the only reason why you're in heaven. I mean, it's you are or you're not. Right.
But is it, so when you sit down with someone and they're like, okay, but why, how does that measure out? How is it that someone's sin and, all the horrible sins and the not so horrible sins all have the same consequence? Why is that? What is the because I think this goes to the nature of the question, which is what are we really sinning against when we sin?
When you sin, it's against God, and it's basically saying, well, Jesus, you didn't come and die. You died for nothing. I mean, that's kind of arrogant. Right? I mean, you think you're perfect and that this person, if you read the Bible and you understand that this person came and said, okay, but so does a good God, does a good father send his son to die for people who don't deserve to go to heaven?
Mm-hmm.
Well, he loved you that much, he loved his son, but this was the path in order to get you there. You rejected, his son, then that's why. Because that was not nothing. That's when you gave that much of a gift, that was not nothing.
Yeah. Do you... I don't want to ask the question.
And you measure against, it's not how bad your sin is, how good is God.
Well, and
okay.
we don't want punishment when it comes to us. But if somebody does something against us or someone we love, we want them to be punished. And so when I think of this question, I think about, I had good parents, but I was very upset when my brothers got off scot-free from something, and I knew they deserved punishment, And so I think we have to remember, if God is good because he punishes those that do not have the blood applied, and he forgives us when we do. He's not good if it's just a free-for-all and everybody can do what they want.
Well, that is so the idea of holding other people accountable when we don't hold ourselves accountable. I mean, frankly, you can see, at least in my opinion, you can see accountability as a root issue in so many things. But what I find fascinating is if for each and every one of us, if I said, who's the worst sinner you know?
Are they in this room?
Sorry.
I don't know other people's sins. If I was saying honestly in this room, I would say me.
See, and I was going to say, the worst sinner I know is in this room because it is me. But for me, and here's what's interesting. For me, that is an intellectual statement more than it is an actual, I still struggle to convince, because I look around at others and I'm like, oh, that's, what I've not done, that's not that bad. Oh, no, it's all, But the evidence for this is Paul, because he calls himself the chief of sinners. And so Paul viewed himself as the worst sinner. And I'd say, part of me will say, "Yep, Paul, you're pretty awful. You're pretty awful." I just don't. But in reality, it is. But I also look at what he did after, in the name of God. I mean, so when I think about it, I'm glad that it's not my actions that are on that are on trial. Like, I mean, you said it's because they've not accepted the blood of Christ, which is absolutely true. The conflict that I see so often is that people want to be rewarded for their good behavior and have their bad behavior ignored, and and not have to submit to God in order to do all of this.
I think in some ways it is, you're asking about all the people that are going to be standing before God and how some people think, oh, I should be here, but then they're going to find out they're not. It's the same way in the military. Everybody joins the military for different reasons. Some are drafted, some are put in by the judges, some are volunteer. And until you are put in that situation of having to truly follow through with actual bloodshed in battle. I know a lot of people look at me and they go, oh yeah, Charlie, you served, 23 years and everything like that. I saw some terrible places, but I never served in a combat situation. And so to this day, my test of my faith in the military and why I believed I have joined has not necessarily been truly tested. Now, there are some people who have gone through true tribulations in their mortal life that really separates the chaff. That they know beyond a shadow of doubt, there is no question this is me. And for some of us, it's taken 5, 10, 20 years sometimes to get to that point. But there are a lot of people in the military that think, oh yeah, I'm patriotic, I'm there for my brother, I'm doing all this, yet we never truly face the hardships of what's really going on. And that's what's going to happen when we go to heaven. All the things that for those who have allowed their belief to be developed into, well, I attended church, I tithed, I did this, I did that. That's going to be all shredded away, and then the truth is going to be revealed, like what you pointed out. It's something simple.
Well, the thing is, we compare to other people, and it's not that's not
Right.
what we're supposed to be comparing to.
Right.
We need to be in Isaiah and say, woe is me, I'm filthy as rags. It's not about how good Bill is, it's not how good Trish is. It's not about that. Because they both have good qualities. They both have a few things that they probably can work on, But that's not the issue. I mean,
Yeah.
the issue is we get compared to God. I mean, we don't get compared to other people at church, I always thought, in our family, my great-grandmother Eaton was was put up on this pedestal by all of her girls and this and stuff. And I'm sure she was a really faithful servant and whatever did. But she was a person. And I know that she had some bad habits because my grandma slipped and said a bad word in front of me while we were washing dishes. And she goes, well, I guess if Jenny can say it, I can say it too. and I would have never thought Jenny Eaton would have said that word, to do it. But it was just so funny because I was shocked that she said it, but it's just, then it's like, we're all humans. No matter what kind of pedestal our families may put us on, even though we may be prayer warriors, maybe we do some good things, but it's not in comparison to each other. It's in comparison to God.
That's what I was reading this. Dr. Aiken says the revolt against God is more than a sin against one's neighbor. It is instead a reproach on an infinitely worthy creator, itself worthy of an infinitely worthy punishment. Human justice, this is when we sentence a man to one punishment. It goes on. But I thought it was interesting the way that he puts that we want to compare our sin to other people, but we, like Wendy is saying, we're comparing our sin to the one holy God. And when we do that, it should have a humbling effect upon us that we are forgiven. And then that humbling effect makes us want to reach out to others.
It's probably, it's kind of butchering the image, but it makes me think of the idea that an artist creates a work of art. He creates something, and then that creation turns against him and says, I don't need you. You didn't create me, or denies it, and which sounds absurd when we say it about, like, if we were to say, I think of Eric's drawings, and he's such a good artist. If one of his drawings was like, you didn't create me, I don't need you. It is absurd. We wouldn't even think to say that, and yet with God all the time we do. You mentioned Isaiah, and I think it's a great. I actually had a conversation recently with someone about the example in Isaiah, because he was, as soon as Isaiah, and I wonder if this is going to be the experience for at the throne in the judgment, because Isaiah saw God, and he immediately knew that he was done for. He was like, I have to die. Like, he knew that he needed to be destroyed because he had seen the face of God. And what happened is God, instead of, it was true. So what had to happen? He either needed to be destroyed or he had to be transformed. And God chose to clean him. He cleansed him. We read in Exodus where up on the mountain, basically God says, you can't see my face or you will die. And that carries forward in the Bible that idea that we can't see God and live as we are. And that's that last clause is the phrase is the important part, is as we are. And what happens? We can't transform ourselves. We can't remake ourselves, and it requires God, which is what Jesus did. His blood is the only thing that can purify us. And so that's what's required for us to be able to be in his presence. So when I think about the judgment and I think about hell, it ultimately comes down to, you can either be in God's presence or you cannot. I see it as God, rather than destroy us, God sends people who haven't accepted Jesus out of his presence and into hell. And whatever hell is, I don't, and I got to thinking about this when, Brad, you made the comment earlier about degrees of punishment in hell and degrees of rewards in heaven. And I think it's the same thing. I have no issue believing that there are different degrees of punishment or types of punishment in hell, because of the fact that I think the reality is, are there different rewards in heaven? Yes. Are we going to care? And it doesn't sound right to say it that way, but are we going to care? No. We're going to be in heaven. Same way. Are there different degrees in punishment in hell? Possibly. Are you going to care? No, because you're in hell. I think that's it's that binary. And ultimately, our attitude has to be, what can we do to keep people out of hell? And the only thing that we can do is introduce them to Christ. And I think that's ultimately what we have to pursue. Now,
I did. Grace was reading to us some commentary
Oh,
from the
yeah.
Bible before we left. She's like, my Bible has lots of commentary.
I should have brought her
about-
tonight.
About hell, so she wanted to read it to us. And
Guest
one
speaker.
of them said, and I can't remember now what they called it. It was basically Christianese, how Christians explain things, and they'll say, well, in hell you'll be eternally separated from God. And her Bible commentary said, well, to most people that don't have God, they don't care. And I thought, well, that's a good point. They already don't want God in their life. So why would they care if they have him in the afterlife or not, in eternity? And so it was just a reminder to me of, you have to be careful how you explain things to people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and you can easily sanitize it. I think and that's what I think. Well, and I know for sure that some of the hesitation about the idea of annihilation, which is ultimate just being destroyed. People go to hell and they're just destroyed and they don't exist anymore, is that makes hell sound too easy. Like there's the idea that not existing isn't punishment enough. If that makes sense.
That's what I thought was interesting in the debate, is one of the things that they brought up was, there's some people that think that would be worse, to not exist.
Yeah. One of the gentlemen who now believes that we are ultimately annihilated if we're in hell, he said he liked it better when he believed in eternal punishment, because he would rather continue to exist in punishment than to have even the thought of being completely annihilated and not existing. He said his argument is we have a fundamental fear of death, and that ultimate death would be the greatest fear. And again, ultimately, he made a lot of compelling, nothing that I was like, oh, well, that's very convincing, because at the end of the day, does it matter whether you're eternally punished or whether you're no longer existing from the perspective of a person in hell? I don't know. It's hell.
The main thing is you're not in heaven.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, it's like, what is that? It's not heaven. That's the
Like, you're either at the beach or you're not.
So-
I'm just saying.
Some scriptures for
So
degrees of punishment.
here, yeah. Well, we may get to some of them here. So I'm going to read through some of it because I want to hit on what these are as examples of as what the Bible is saying here, and in some of these represent Jesus' statements, and then others are in the writings. But one of the things Jesus said, he says, "Do not fear those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul." Sorry, Matthew 10:28. "Rather fear him who can destroy both soul and body in hell." And you'll hear arguments of is that destroy? Is that does that mean complete annihilation? Which again, I'm going to kind of set that aside because I just want to convey. What I want is us to understand what the Bible is trying to warn against. He goes on in Matthew 23. It's "But woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites!" And this is an important set of scriptures here because there's a separate point I want to make about this. It says, "For you shut the kingdom of heaven in people's faces, for you neither enter yourselves nor allow those who would enter to go in. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you travel across sea and land to make a single proselyte, and when he becomes a proselyte, you make him twice as much a child of hell as yourselves. You serpents, you brood of vipers, how are you to escape being sentenced to hell?" And then, so I'll stop with those three for a second. So he's talking to the Pharisees here, and I think this to me is as much a warning for us as it is for anyone else, in that it's less about warning people about going to hell, as like their problem is they're sending other people. They're basically packaging people up and prepping them and readying them for hell. So not only are they not doing the things necessary to get people into the kingdom and to disciple people ultimately, but they are putting them on the fast track to hell. And and Jesus talks about also about what happens to those who cause even one of these little ones to stumble. A millstone, it'd be better if a millstone were hung around his neck and he were thrown into the sea.
So what your meaning is, as followers of Jesus, if we are heaping other rules upon these people like the Pharisees, we are causing the fast track to heaven. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and it's not, so the warning, the caution is for us, because, and this was the verse that got me with this. It says, "For you neither enter yourselves nor allow those who would enter to go in." So the people who would go in, they're like you said, heaping rules on them to prevent them from going in. They're holding them back and preventing them.
Well, they were in positions of power,
Yes.
and people were coming to them for answers, right? So I think that means that we have a special responsibility when we have people come and ask us about
Right.
Jesus and our faith, that we can explain it in a way that, not that we're perfect in the explanation, but that we don't add any criteria to it. You know, whatever it is, that we keep it simple and what the basic truth is for salvation, and not get into our little mini doctrines like
Yeah.
feet washing, or whether you have a piano in the church or not, or, you know, all the
Putting
other
money in
things.
Brad's airplane account.
So,
I mean, you know,
well, so let me ask you this then, and this be for anyone, I'll ask the question and watch who squirms. Is there any difference between what the Pharisees were doing and us not asking people we know if they're going to heaven? And I'm not talking about waiting for someone to approach you and ask you about it, but if we are not approaching the people we know, our family, our friends, those around us, and making sure and the answer may be no, but if we don't even ask, are we doing anything different?
That's what I love about the Penn and Teller video. I don't know if you ever saw that before. Where a person was getting his autograph from, I can't remember if it's Penn or Teller, I don't know which one's which, but a guy tries to minister to him, and he's a known atheist. You know, very strong. He makes a lot of videos about how he's an atheist, and the guy tried to minister to him and gave him a Bible.
Waited, in fact, in line to meet him, like waited for hours to meet him in order to do this.
And he tells them, you know, it struck him of how much a person would have to hate him, that if they truly believe this, to not share the gospel with them. And that always struck me. That always struck me.
It's probably for me one of the most convicting thoughts is the idea that are there people in this life who will be in hell simply because I did not ask them what they believed.
I'm thankful for the person who asked me the night that I was saved if I was going to be in heaven or not.
Yeah.
Well, I don't even know that person. They just tapped me on the shoulder. They were sitting behind me in church. But I am so thankful that they did that night.
Yep. So I don't know that, to me, I think
I think sometimes you become more bold. It was probably, you become more bold when you think that something is eternal. I think sometimes we have a hard time wrapping our mind around eternity.
yeah, I would agree with
Because I'm
that.
very finite, because, I try, but it's just not always all there. And I just know a person in a situation, and multiple times, like with my dad, he had been converted and then had lost a child and lived a life that wasn't looking like a Christian life and stuff. And then whenever he had lung cancer, that became very important
Yeah.
question to be asking and stuff. And there was lots of people, and I'm within our family, there was lots of people within this church that were scared to do that. I don't know. Bob had said, not when he said this, I don't want to screw it up. I don't want to screw it up when he, because, he knew that there needed to be a conversation had.
Yeah.
Because I'm praying about it, I just don't know that it's supposed to be me, But, it was all those different things. I don't know if it had to be somewhere or not, but it ended up being a pastor that had been with my grandfather through his skin. So it ended up being okay.
Yeah.
It's just, it took like 2 months And he only had like 3 months to live, okay?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, for people to kind of do that, I mean.
Right.
And I had said lots of things to him at different times, but he didn't necessarily, respond to that. But I think sometimes when you know something, when you take it that seriously as someone that you love, and sometimes even then it's hard for people to broach it.
Yeah.
Alone when it's someone that you don't have that strong of a connection with.
Yeah.
But when you know that you might not see them again, I know of a situation that happened yesterday where I saw someone witness to another person that they knew they weren't going to see again. Because I thought, this person does not know because
Yeah.
the situation they were in. It was obvious that they did not know. They may have at one time, but they did not know then, and that person shared. And I thought, yeah,
Yeah.
that's the right thing to do. You know,
Right.
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
It's
Yeah.
the right thing to do, but do we do it all the time? No.
Yeah. No. And so often, and maybe we do a week where we just talk about this, but the idea of approaching people and witnessing to them and asking them that question. I mean, for like, just generally speaking, most people are non-confrontational. They don't like talking about hard things anyway. And so we don't want to have those conversations. And then you mentioned the fear of messing it up. But I have become convinced, so I still don't like having hard conversations, but I have become convinced that if I am earnestly seeking to reach someone for the Lord, I'm not going to mess that up. Like, that's one of those places where if God is after them, He'll figure it out. Like, He didn't ask me to get it perfect, He asked me to move. And
That's the key. That's the key. Because we put so much pressure on ourselves when the pressure is not upon us. God is the only one that can deliver them. And when we realize it's God that's doing the delivering, all we have to do is say something.
yeah,
Faith comes by hearing, and hearing from the Word of God. If we just preach the message of the gospel, not preach it, but if we just open our mouths, just watch God's Word. And I think one thing, though, that we do discount, I think sometimes as Baptists we kind of run away from it, but that still small voice of the Holy Spirit. That, because there's been times where I've been driving down the road, and it's like, you guys, everybody's going to think I'm crazy now, but it's like the Holy Spirit saying, hey, go talk to that guy. And one time I pulled into a hayfield, got out of my truck, and went and talked to a guy. I don't know why.
I don't know how many times I've had to pull the car over because Eric's like, stop. And he'll just get out of the car. He doesn't tell me what he's doing. And he'll just take off walking. And I'm like, where are you going?
But I don't think we should ignore those things.
right.
And there's times where God's like, you be quiet. Because I think sometimes we can push too hard. I've seen that.
Yeah.
I've seen that happen as well.
Is it pushing too hard, or I think for me it's more of a matter of what is your motivation in that? And if you pushing too hard, if you're trying to prove how right you are or prove how wrong they are, the idea for me, and I think this is why these verses are so important, because the focus needs to be not on us and not on who's right or wrong. It's the truth in love. And it's like, okay, if I'm motivated by what I'm trying to win them to and away from, then again, back to am I going to mess it up? I'm going to mess up, yes. Am I going to mess them up? Not worse than God can fix them. So, that's where I have to come back to.
I think back to what Wendy said, though, we like to think we're going to see everybody again. But the truth is, we don't know when the last time we're going to see somebody.
Right.
Sometimes we have a little bit of warning, like with a diagnosis, or, we know it's coming, but a lot of times we don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think another trap that we fall in a lot of too is we fall in the trap of, well, I don't know as much as Michael did. I don't know as much as Brad does. And therefore, I can't really show God's love. And yet, there are people who share testimonies that because how they saw someone live their life, that was a witness. You know, I mean, we read the Bible, we know that there's apostles, we know that they stood out from the rest of the congregation, you know, because of how they prayed, what they said, what they've done. We read their words as God's, you know, that God spoke to them. But realize the hundreds or thousands of Christians that are behind them, that are praying. You know?
Yeah.
When they were in jail, it wasn't their prayers that got them out of jail, it was the prayers
Right.
of the brothers and sisters that got them out of jail.
Yeah.
And they're surprised when they show up.
Yeah.
Well,
But-
and I think something that paralyzes me is we've heard so much now about you have to have relationships with people. Well, relationships take a lot of time. You know, and I'm thinking, well, how do you know when you have a good enough relationship with somebody that you can share something with them? Hopefully you're sharing all the time, but you know what I mean? That you can approach this subject. But I think that almost paralyzes some of us because we're like, well, we don't have a good enough relationship yet.
I think that I annoy my family because my wife says I talk to everyone. You know, if we're in line somewhere, I'm talking to them. I think with a relationship, it doesn't have to be extensive. It can be like short little conversations where I'm talking to them and finding out a little bit about them, and then I'll slip in, oh, I'm a pastor. And then it'll lead to conversations, you know. So I don't think within that, sometimes it doesn't even have to be a very long relationship. It can be very brief. But just that I'm building up a little bit of a rapport with that person.
I'll share this.
Are you gonna tell the story about the guy?
Yeah. We were watching Kilauea where this is taken. We were with a church planner in Hawaii.
Armin Jordan.
Yeah, we knew he was gonna be there, but we drove separately and we ran into him there. And this guy was really nice. He was sharing his binoculars, you know, walking around. Hey, does anybody want to see this through binoculars? Well, we were striking up a conversation with him, you know, thanking him for sharing the binoculars. And he somehow asked Armin what he does. And he goes, oh, I'm a pastor. And the guy just basically didn't know what to say at that point. And he finally
Did a double take. Like he kind of had this double take.
I mean, we couldn't see his face because it was dark, but you could just tell he was probably going, you know.
Yeah.
And he didn't stay there too much
He
longer.
shut the conversation down and he was gone.
And
Like
he goes, thank you for your services. And then he
just walked.
he booked it, and Armin was like, I've never been thanked for my services.
It was, and the guy was super chatty before that, and as soon as he heard pastor, it was just like, he's done and out, and yeah.
We never saw him again. We saw him
Nope.
probably 2 or 3 times before that, and then after that, we never saw him again.
So you just don't know, and it's up to each person to make the decision on their own, and that's all we can do.
I think one way that you're able to see that, I think, or for me, I mean, it's just for me, I don't know. But I don't think it's just for me. I think that has to be part of our daily prayers. Is that today, I mean, we just sang the song in here, and that's one thing, is that God opened my eyes so I can see the opportunities I have right here, because I think I don't have that many opportunities. Because some of us, you know, we work from home, or we're not out around that many people, or this and that, and we think, I don't have the opportunities that so-and-so has, because they're working, and, you know, but we're out and about sometimes, and sometimes it may be about praying for someone that's been laid on our heart. It may be something else, but I'm just like, I just think there's always something we can be doing.
Mm-hmm.
But we just have to, if we ask him to show us, he's going to show us. But if we don't ask, we may not get shown, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Well, we have to have time to be watching too.
Yeah,
We can't just have our heads down, not paying attention.
just surviving,
Yeah.
or going through what we think is important.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that some things aren't important, but sometimes,
Yeah, sometimes you gotta stop the car.
it's,
Or get out, right?
We're delivering, not when we're delivering.
sometimes for us, I can remember as a busy family, sometimes it was saying no to some activities for my kids.
Yeah.
Because we were just going so much. I'm like, okay, I know you want to do this now, but we're going to make some choices here. You choose what you want to do on this and that, because it was affecting the family.
You mean they don't have to play every sport?
No. It's just,
They didn't get the memo.
it's just, you don't have to do certain things, you can do that, and then you actually can have a more full family life and some other things, and if you're not doing that all the time. But, I mean, my kids did sports, I'm not saying that I'm against all sports or anything, but I'm just saying sometimes we just say yes to too many things
Mm-hmm.
and not enough yes to God.
Yeah. I'll share this because this was this is in Revelation. This is, we're Revelation 22, where it's right at the end, and it gives this contrast that I think really sets the stage for, what we think about. And in these two verses, it says, "Blessed are those who wash their robes, so that they may have the right to the tree of life, and that they may enter the city by the gates, which is those who have washed their robes in the blood of the Lamb." And that grants access to that tree of life. And the contrast is that outside the city, outside are the dogs and the sorcerers and the sexually immoral and the murderers and the idolaters and everyone who loves and practices falsehood. And what I find fascinating about this is that's the state of everyone before you're washed and walk in through the gates. And so you're either on the outside or the inside, and that's how it portrays it in Revelation. And those are the two states, outside or inside, and you're either in heaven or you're not. And I think that's, we talk about what it looks like for others, and and for ourselves, and okay, just sometimes it's just do something, but we need to examine ourselves and say, okay, I am the worst sinner I know. Have I given it all over to God? And am I trusting Christ for that? And if I can't answer yes to that, then I have to think about where I stand. And then when I'm confident in that, then it's time for me to go do something. Because at no point is the Christian life sit and wait, or sit still. I don't mean sit and wait. Sometimes there are times when God tells us to wait, but we're always supposed to be doing. And when we think about hell and we think about this topic, and to figure out how to wrap this up, I was thinking, okay, what do we do with this? How do we approach this? It doesn't matter what the question is, or what if we take those original guiding principles, the things we know about God that are true, and we look at it logically. And what God did doesn't make sense in human terms. It's why He's God and we're not. He figures it all out. But all of the things with what we know about God logically follow through. Everything that we look at about hell, all of the judgments, all of the decisions, all of the parameters that we understand about hell follow the logic of who God is. He's good, He's just, He's right, and He always does the right thing. It's not I don't think we get wound around the axle about all of the details about hell. It's just that it exists and it's eternal. Whatever that looks like, it's there and it's forever, just like heaven is. And I think if we can confidently say we believe in eternity of heaven, then the antithesis of that, the opposite of that, is an eternity of hell. And that's what we have to be faced with. And then otherwise, we don't get bogged down in the details. So.
So as believers, why do we have to be concerned about hell?
We have to be, we don't have to be concerned about hell as believers. We have to be passionate, and I think we have to have the heart of God toward those who are bound for hell. That's why hell is important. That's why hell matters, or why the idea and understanding of what hell is matters, is because that's what we desperately want to keep people out of.
Well, and to encourage us to keep witnessing and
Yeah.
keep reaching others.
Yeah. Like I said, if anybody's interested, there's a link there that will take you to the 2.5-hour video, or if you just go look up Hellgate on YouTube, there's the picture of what it looks like. But yeah, it's a good conversation. So, all right. Any other questions? Comments? Moans, groans, cries of anguish? It's fitting for the topic. All right. Very good. We'll go ahead and close in prayer then. Gracious Father, I thank you so much for all that you do in our lives. I thank you for what you've equipped us with, Lord, with your word, the salvation that you give us, Lord, this church family, Father, believers that we can gather with and worship together, Father, praise you and just rejoice in the kingdom. Help us, Lord, to go out and bring as many people in as we possibly can and seek to serve you in all that we do. In Jesus' holy name I pray. Amen.